Welcome, everyone. We're back. Today we're going to talk about truth and the flexibility. What is really truth? What's true for one person is not necessarily true for another person, and sometimes truth can be bent and rearranged. So we're just going to talk about that today.
Yeah, and one question I like to ask is, what is the purpose of truth? Are there, we talk about absolute truths, but what does truth really do? And I think some of the things are they help us keep a common cultural perspective. There are agreements that we make within cultures, especially sometimes within families, what the truth is. It gives us a form,
Like
to
a
our world.
foundation or a
Yeah.
structure.
A structure to our world. And yet sometimes we look at what are some of the truths that we learn.
Okay, well, it depends on where you want to get them from. There's religious truths which say, we should respect each other and don't lie and don't steal. And
If you say it's a truth, is it a should?
Or is it a should?
It just is.
Okay, that's true.
For instance, many people say there is a God. There
Right.
is God. There is a greater power. That's just plain and simple. There are people who don't, but that's most of us in our cultural orientation, especially in the Judeo-Christian world. In the Muslim world, there is a God.
Right. And then we're doing all the shoulds.
Or describing, getting specific. Because, okay, we agree that, whatever God is. Some people learn that God is a male.
Yeah.
God, that's the way the Bible is written. God is a man, male. Greater than all that, but a male. So, it's like, okay, and what truth does that serve?
Right. Well, then you get into, if you want to bring a little astrology into it, each sign, whether it's a Aries or Taurus or Leo or Sagittarius or Pisces or whatever, they all have a way of looking at the world, and truth is influenced by that way of looking at the world. But the real truth seeker is a Sagittarius, and in its highest expression, it is looking for the bigger truth. So in the lower expression, it has, each one of us has like a personal truth. It's like what's true for us and what we believe is true and our black and white. But in the bigger, higher expression, it's looking for the truth that is that encompasses everything. So it'd be more like a cosmic truth, a divine truth. It's something that satisfies many
Needs.
many variations within people. Or so, in other words, like one truth might be a bigger truth. Like you just got done saying, is that there's a higher being, there's a God, there's a goddess, there's some sort of a higher being, that we are a piece of that higher being in some, however you want to say, we're in that whatever expression. But in other words, the truth could be there's more to us than meets the eye. I mean, we're just energy looking like we're human.
It's true, yeah. And quantum theory and quantum physics demonstrates that. You can see under a microscope how much space there is between our molecules.
Yeah.
And yet that is difficult for some people. They don't want that to be a truth because we are so attached to our physical world.
Yeah.
So what are some of the agreements we make around truth when we decide something is true? For instance, what would a Sagittarius or a group of Sagittarians agree with?
They would be arguing all their philosophies.
Uh-huh.
But ultimately, though, the evolutionary goal of the Sagittarius is to take the personal truth and expand it to encompass the greater whole. That's kind of like the evolutionary theme. So in other words, so what might be true for me is like, okay, I can't eat dairy or wheat. We'll just say that for an example. That may be a personal truth, but a bigger truth that would encompass all of us is that we are part of a very interconnected network of vibrations that forms our world and the population that's on it and all the life forms that's on it, that might be a bigger truth that would serve, that would encompass more people. I don't know.
So-
Does that make any sense?
Well, I'm trying to draw the line between if your dietary truths and how they would expand to the world, and how I see that is there are people, for instance, I'm a vegetarian, but there are some people who believe that everyone is essentially vegetarian and should be vegetarian,
Right,
and that nobody should eat meat.
right.
And so you say, okay, so we love animals.
Mm-hmm.
What do we feed our animals?
Mm-hmm.
If we have animals who are essentially carnivorous, is that a falseness? Should they not
Right.
be eating each other? Should animals in the wild not be killing and eating each other? Can we actually live in the quintessential Garden of Eden where
Right.
nobody harms anybody and the lion lays down with the lamb? You
Well,
know,
then,
what,
then you get, so yeah, we went down a rabbit hole really quick because then you get involved with, okay, so now you've got a cat or or even a dog. They're carnivorous, or a bear or a lion. You know, they're all carnivore. Well, bears eat everything, but you know,
Omnivorous,
basically, you've got carnivorous people. So if you're going to take the role that killing is bad, is evil, then how do you reconcile the fact that there's particular species that are deliberately designed to be predatorial and to eat other animals?
and then we look at science. What does science tell us? Science tells us that that's the truth or a truth.
Right.
But if we feel strongly about that, we say, well, science is wrong. That science doesn't
Right.
really say that science, and we find another science to support it.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, see, so here we go. Maybe this is what's made me think about this whole thing. It's like, it's like looking on the internet, or there's all this truth about. We'll use diet for example. Should you eat fat? Should you not eat fat? Should you eat meat? Should you do a keto diet? Should you do a carb diet? Should you do a this? Should you do that? I mean, it's like there's scientific evidence that proves you should do this. No, you shouldn't do this. Yes, you should do that. No, you shouldn't do that. And it's like, what do you believe? What is the truth?
And so when we look at, especially in this day and age when we have access to so much information, whether it be valid information or made up information, it's hard to find what agreements we have about truth. I mean,
Right.
it used to be that it's commonly accepted.
Right.
Or we would say it serves our culture to be a certain way. It helps us maintain our civil life. It helps us maintain our cultural orientation so that things make sense. And generally, I think that's true of generally accepted truths. But those change so quickly.
Yeah, as
these days.
society changes, as our needs change, because we're no longer, most of us, are not in survival mode. We have our basic needs met, so we can look beyond where, the truths, the tribal truths that you're talking about. You had to act this way, you had to do this. Women did this, men did this, animals were food or they weren't or whatever. I mean, that was all about survival. But our needs are beyond. I mean, there's a lot of us that are struggling to survive, but that's a little different than being life or death matters,
Right.
and so yeah, the truths have changed, and now it's like, I've done bookkeeping and tax work and accounting type work for years, and I tell you, whatever you want the answer to be, it can be arranged. And that happens. And so here numbers are supposed to be cold and hard facts, but they can be arranged
That's
to present
true.
however statistic you want or whatever answer you want. Oh, you just leave out that number and the answer comes out just right. Or you add in that number and the answer comes out just right. I mean, so this truth thing, it's like it's a sliding scale.
No, so we're looking at that and we look at, okay, what's the purpose behind taxes? What's the purpose behind an agreement about what money means? What's the purpose behind, any number of those things? And part of it is we want to live in a society that's peaceful.
Right.
Most of us want that.
And that we get along and it's harmonious and we're not
But
bumping up against each other.
what's the truth of what we need to do, what I need to do personally to make that work? What is the truth of what any other given person or group of persons would have to be like, or what would their orientation be for them to help to be able to live peacefully with me.
Right.
And it seems that even that has been questioned because we're going back, we're supposed to be advanced people, we're supposed to be evolved, and yet we're going back to our hindbrain and going with what excites us, what gets our adrenaline going,
Right.
more than what makes us peaceful.
Right.
For many people, it seems that peaceful is not a place they want to be.
No, because they're so used to being. I did a massage on a lady, and I tell you, I still remember it. This was years ago, and she was all anxious and wound up, just tight as a drum. And she's worse than I am. And I couldn't believe it because so I gave her a massage, and it took a lot to get her to relax. I mean, to actually just stop your mind, stop going like this, and just relax. And she got done. She says, I don't feel good. I don't feel right. I don't feel like myself. And so here, this is an example of a person's truth. So for one person, for them to feel like they're feeling okay, they have to feel like they're wound up like like what is it,
Like a tight clock.
like a tight
An
clock,
old-fashioned clock.
or
the one,
or wound up like a top,
Or
and
spring,
and just go
yeah.
wing, I mean
Yeah.
for them that's their truth, and to shift that, it's like this is strange territory. We aren't going there.
When do truths change? And we talked a lot about our personal truths and
Yeah.
what affects how we work with more generalized truths and how we integrate things or don't integrate them. What kinds of things can change a personal truth?
I think this is my own opinion, but I think that what changes truth has to do with when we change what's inside us, how we relate to the world. So, and usually what will happen, this is another one of my little favorite truths, is I think that there's somebody else running the show besides my ego. And so, because I mean, it's like here, we've come with an agenda, and there's some people who say, oh no, I only have this life, God gave it to me, and God's going to take it away from me when I'm done, and that's the end of it. But so that's their truth. But my truth is that I believe that we come in with an agenda. Our soul has a plan. Our soul has been practicing these lessons for who knows how long, and so we can go along believing our little limited truths, like I'm supposed to be wound up like a tight drum all the time, and that's the only way I can be. But something will happen, something either external. Well, usually it is external. You'll get some sort of a 2x4 across your head. I mean, whether it's an accident, a car accident, you lose your job, you lose your partner, something.
It's
a
usually
wake-up
something.
call.
Is it usually something negative? You think?
Well, sometimes it seems like the negative things have more of an effect than positive.
Because I think of something like falling in love,
Well, now that'll do it, but then you...
especially with someone who is not like you, who has
Yeah.
very different truths, and yet you still have that chemistry, and there's something that draws you. There are many things you may have in
Yeah.
common, and they may treat you beautifully. But when we have, especially in this day and age, when we have people who are of different faiths or of different political parties, even which amount almost to different faiths, sometimes those just burn out. But
Yeah.
sometimes they give us a change of heart, which can give us a change
They open
of
a
truth.
door.
They do, I think, sometimes. And
Yeah.
and sometimes arguing, especially arguing civilly, or having those conversations that are on the borderline of civil and not civil, really getting your truth out, but actually listening to someone else's truth
Right.
can inform
Trying to
Or
put
truth
yourself
sometimes.
in the other person's
shoes
from the
or
point,
in their
to
place.
see
Yeah.
things from their perspective. And so it's interesting because some people are actually designed to be a lot more open-minded than other people. Like in human design, they
Right.
talk about the defined head and ajna, and those people are like a little more. They're the transmitters, It's like they kind of have kind of their own way of thinking of things.
Is it more rigid,
A
you
little
think?
more
Oh,
rigid,
okay. So,
yeah,
okay.
and it's like they're not quite as flexible. Where people have an open head and open head and ajna, they take in other ideas, and they mush them around in there, and they can see things, especially with the open ajna. They can see things from all different sides. And so the flip side, the hard part of it is that it's hard for them to be certain.
Ah,
Because,
okay.
you know, a person with a defined head in ajna, it's like, I know what I know, and this is the way it is, and this is, I know what I know. Well, the person with the open head takes in all the ideas, and then they process it, or if they have a open ajna, the processing center, then it's like, well, it could be this way, and it could be this
So
way.
the ajna
and
is a
it couldn't.
processing center?
Yeah, the head
Okay.
is kind of like, in human design, I've kind of modified this a little bit, but the head is where you receive ideas and inspirations, and the ajna is kind of like the third eye area. It's where you process.
okay.
It's
Okay.
where you process things.
Mhm.
It's kind of like your database.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's my database.
Uh-huh.
And so,
So I get
yeah.
that because I must have an open head, because some people would call me wishy-washy. I can
Yeah.
be very, I can be very passionate about things I believe in,
right.
but how they are manifested, how they're shown in the world, or how I express them, can really be influenced by someone disagreeing with me or someone giving me new input.
Right.
It's constantly going back and forth. And it's like,
Right.
to me, so many people have good points.
Right, yeah. Well, and that's where you know, the openness, you're able to receive other points of view.
Yeah.
And so there gets to be the malleability of truth. So, okay, so that person says this, and that person says that, and that person says this. And so you take it all in and you wish it all around and say, what feels right to me?
But do you
know?
ever, because I know I do this sometimes, especially when you've dealt with a lot of different people and given them the benefit of the doubt, and yourself, if you listen to yourself and given yourself the benefit of doubt, and I want to talk about that later, but I can call BS on them.
Right.
They say, they really believe in this, and that this is where they get this from, and it's just a rationalization.
Right.
Because, well, why do we rationalize? Basically shame and pride.
Well, and we also rationalize because I've got the gate of rationalization. It's a way of justifying non-action or
okay.
settling for less. That's the low expression. The highest expression of it is to take an idea, a concept, an inspiration, and be able to form it into a tangible, down-to-earth sort of framework that someone can understand, that can
okay.
be shared. That's the highest.
So the highest is
Form
to
of
help
it.
people understand through
Yeah.
rationalizing, to
Yeah.
help. And I can understand it because I have a tendency to try to do that. If my husband will say, why the heck are they doing that? And I can come up with 3 or 4 reasons why they
Right.
might be doing that. And you say,
Right.
oh, you just rationalize, you're just making up excuses for them. It's like, well, you didn't ask me to make excuses, you asked me why they would
Right.
do that. And I could put myself in their
Right, and the
in their
gate
shoes
and
and
the gate
sometimes
of
understand.
rationalization in human design is opposite the why gate. So here it is. They ask you, well, why? Why are they doing that? And the rationalization, the natural flow of it is, well, this is why, and this is some sort of a tangible reason. Now, it can go, like you said, you could be making excuses, and I've done that. Used to settle for less, or just because you don't want to rock any boats because of other things, you just, but generally, yeah, the idea is this, to being open-minded, and that's the other part of the Sagittarius piece too, is to see the higher truth, you have to be open-minded. You have to allow in other people's perspectives, other people's truths, and say each person's truth is right for them. It's their truth, and they, I guess, deserve it, or they, you can honor them for having the truth. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right truth for you, but it's their truth, and if they believe it, and if it supports them, then who are you to say otherwise? And
So-
that's part of the whole bigger vision of truth, is allowing everyone else to have their own truths. So how do we get along?
So, I keep thinking of higher truths can have varied manifestations.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean necessarily that truth itself changes, but how we see it, how we understand it, how it expresses itself among larger groups or smaller groups can really show up differently. And I think, boy, of course I'm me, I'm thinking kindness, being present with people instead of just expecting everybody to shape up your way, can open me to the truth. When I'm judging someone, that is much harder to be open to their truth. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking their truth is all BS.
Right. And sometimes it is.
And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's my BS. Sometimes I am ashamed of something. Oh, God, I have to. Once in a while, I'll do something, I'll look back, and I'm ashamed. It was really something, it wasn't me acting like me and my higher self. And yet, I could fool a lie detector because I have rationalized why that was indeed the appropriate behavior, the appropriate language, the appropriate response.
It's like justifying.
Yeah, it's like justifying it. And there's a fine line between justifying and rationalizing, I think. And I think also sometimes being prideful, that's the ego.
Right.
When our ego depends on something, we will find a lot of reasons to
justify it.
And
Yeah.
I know one of the things that I've had conversations with particular individuals about is, and I'm going to say it out loud because I'm not afraid to rock the boat, even though it's uncomfortable, is white male privilege. The advantage of being a white male in this culture, no matter who you are, and there is a lot of pride around that as being, all the accomplishments are self-made, self-done, and that's a truth. You work hard, you can get things. And yet, we see people who work really hard who are not advantaged in a way that allows their hard work to get them what they have really earned. And yet so the truth around that is really difficult. And it doesn't mean we have to say someone is more valuable than another, and it doesn't mean that we have to say that people have to make particular reparations or that people have to diminish themselves, because to raise someone up doesn't mean anybody else has to be diminished. But there's all this rationalization about, around whether that is so or that's not so.
Well, that's a shift in consciousness that's happening now. It's like, used to be to rise up the ranks, you had to step on somebody, and now it's kind of like a shift in consciousness saying, we can share the same platform.
Rise together, yeah.
Yeah, we can rise together.
And it's really, if we want what we say with the original truth, if we want a kind and working social system, the only way to do it is to have us all rising
some sort
together.
Of, equal type system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how do we allow others' personal truths when it really challenges our personal truth? Because when we look at where we got our personal truths from
society, our family,
and sometimes
teachers.
If you stop and look, I always think of, I went for 4 years, or close to 4 years, we were in a situation, I went to a Catholic school, and it was 2nd through 5th grade, so I was very impressionable, and of course we love to impress our teachers and our priests and the people who are above us. And so I had picked up things, learned things that I always believed God was loving, that the great force was a loving force. But I have an aunt who I saw every 4 to 8 years maybe. And she's an amazing woman. I look at that now. But I saw her when I was an adult, and she said, Jackie, you told me once that because I smoked, I was going to hell. Oh. I mean, did I believe that? Did I know what that meant? I hope, I give myself the benefit of the doubt. My truth is, I didn't fully understand the breadth, the power of that, or the breadth of that statement. If she would have said, well, what does that mean, that I'm going to hell? And why is smoking bad? I had just learned smoking was bad. Now, my dad smoked less and less as time went on, but why wasn't my dad going to hell? Why didn't I not make that association?
Right.
Maybe it was only other people, because in a way my aunt was other because I saw her so rarely. Or maybe only girls weren't allowed to smoke. At that time, that might have been something. So I look at that. But at that time, I suppose that was a truth, but it was definitely a BS truth. Really, what? Right. So And I have no, I look at that and you know, there's shame behind that.
Yeah.
But that's what we do. We pick up things, and some of the thoughts that we pick up and some of the truths we pick up really serve no purpose except to separate us
Mm-hmm.
from others. And do we choose, if each of us was brought somewhere and said, okay, you have a choice. If your truth separates you from others and keeps the world in division, do you still want to keep that truth, or would you rather acquire a truth that brings us together?
Right. So that's the idea. Do you want to be right, or do you want to get along? You know, and then
Or
truth
be well,
comes,
or, you know,
that's
yeah.
where truth comes in. It's like, you know, because I know there's people that get on their high horse. This is the way it's going to be, and this is the only way it can be, and it's like,
Well, it's not that way, so where are we now? You know,
yeah. So how do we reconcile this?
yeah.
And so, yeah.
And I think that's a tough one, because we don't often ask ourselves, because I keep saying we, I'm trying not to say we as much, but I honor my past.
Uh-huh.
When my husband, who's very different than I am culturally and religiously and politically, says, oh, I just figuring that out, I just went blank. But he'll ask me, you know, where did I come up with that? Why do I believe that? There's no way that I could believe that and be the person that I am, but I do believe it. And you know, you're never going to survive. Oh, my parents, you know, you're never going to survive in the world being the sensitive person you are. You know, they're going to eat you alive. I haven't been eaten alive yet.
You're still surviving.
Yeah, and I've done some suffering, but it's all been instructive.
Right.
And I treat people hopefully the way I want to be treated generally.
Uh-huh.
You know, sometimes I'm a schmuck. You know, I guess that's part of the human condition.
Yeah.
But the truth is, to me, it has to be flexible.
Right.
Because my life is not static. I'm
Right.
not dead yet. Maybe when I'm dead, I will be privy to the great truth. But for me now, it's basically acknowledging I'm connected to all things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's as close as I can get. My name for God is all that is. And so I darn well better respect and treat well everything, all
Right.
that is.
Right.
Even people who are jerks.
Right.
Because who knows what's going on? And it's like, well, then you just give everybody a pass.
Well, and to some degree,
It's just-
if we're all the same, if we all have the same core, we're all
Yeah.
from the same stock. I mean, we're all one.
And we do give,
You know.
I think we need to give, it does us good to give more passes.
Right.
Because we judge.
Oh, that's the flip side of truth. You
That's
know,
it.
you get stuck in your rut of truth, and it's like everyone else is judged as inferior, and that's one of the, you know,
And
one
it's a
of the
big
signs
separator.
likes to do
Yeah.
that too. Yeah.
A big divider, and I don't think that our world benefits by being more divided.
No.
So I'm willing to give people a pass, especially, you ever heard the expression, choose your battles?
Uh huh.
Whatever happened to that? Everything doesn't have to be
A battle.
my way or your way.
Right.
I mean,
And in
yeah.
conflict then.
In conflict, yeah.
Yeah.
And look how we can be in conflict, but if we put those particular things aside, we can get along marvelously. I mean, my husband and I have a great relationship, but there are some very different truths we have from each other.
Right. So there we go again. It's the individual truth expanding out into the greater. What is the greater truth? And you know, there's all this talk now. The new jargon now is all about being authentic. And what is your authentic self? And got to be authentic, and that means, I guess you could say, that's being truthful, and being open and honest. And it's like, how do you do that in our society where we have such a double standard of, oh, well, this is right for me, but it's not right for you, you know, and I can do this, but you can't do that. I mean, and it's like, how do you merge the two so that get back to the bigger truth? Well, it's like, actually, you know, we're all in this game together. We may as well figure out how to get along.
Well, and I think if we look at our bigger truth, we're looking at being authentic and expressing our personal truth, well, where does our personal truth fit in with our greatest truth?
Right.
And I think so often we're so caught in the personal truth in the moment of
like
who we are.
somebody, Bruce stepped on somebody was mean to my dog, and somebody was,
Somebody insulted me.
yeah.
I
Yeah, I got my feelings hurt.
Well,
So
as a woman, have you ever had someone defend your honor? I have had experiences where men have done things that are totally against my ultimate truth, totally against my personal truth, because they felt it was their need to defend my honor, which is basically interposing their truths of how things are on top of my truths, and how that defends me really boggles me. And I have said that, of course, I get challenged with being a raging feminist. Say, well, if standing up for myself is being a raging feminist, then sign me up. But it's like, and yeah, I'm as valid as anybody else, so why do I have to have you defend me
Right.
with words and actions that are not me at all?
that is going back to an old truth where women were not powerful and the men were powerful, and centuries ago, where the woman needed a man to be able to survive, but that's not the case anymore.
Well, I had someone who was
And
lying because he was trying to protect me. I was holding a
Oh.
particular position for which I was responsible for certain things. And he wanted to just bypass all of the things that my position were supposed to oversee. And so he didn't tell me about any of this.
Oh.
And it was ultimately my responsibility to oversee this. And so I questioned him delicately about it. And this was not a person who dug in, but he was vicious, explaining how he was doing this for me.
oh,
He was doing it for his own ego. Come on. If he would have just said that, I would have said, okay, now I know, let's
Right.
do. But no, his truth, and his real truth was he was doing it because he felt this was a wonderful thing to do, and it would be done quicker if it didn't follow the rules, and it wasn't hurting anybody. That was his truth, and that
Yeah.
was closer to the actual truth.
right.
But to make up this whole thing about he was protecting me
Right.
from having to answer to some higher authority should they come into the picture, that really insulted me. And eventually we worked it out. But we have all these, we do change our truth, and we lie
Yeah.
about our truth.
Yeah, we misrepresented.
And you misrepresenting. But
That's a
sometimes
nicer way of
if we're
saying it.
misrepresenting it to ourselves,
Yeah, we do it to ourselves
then
too.
how can we tell
Other
our
people.
true truth to others if
We
we
don't.
do that?
We don't. We misrepresent
Yeah.
ourselves. So yeah. This whole thing of truth is probably going to be more than just this conversation, because we misrepresent ourselves to other people. So in other words, it's like, for example, you want to speak up. You don't want to go to the restaurant to have lunch or dinner, but you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings, and you know that they really want to go. So it's like, okay, you don't say anything. So so here's a question, am I being true to myself? Am I honoring myself? Am I surrendering to another person? This is where it gets so muddy. And so how do you work through okay, so we've talked a lot about truth and untruth and rearranging the truth and what it is and what it isn't and all that stuff. But so the bottom line is, how do we live our life and try to be as truthful and honest and open with ourselves and the world?
I think when you ask, especially when it comes to the restaurant, because both of us have dietary habits that are not mainstream.
Right.
Is that, well, okay. So when someone says, and our partners love to go out to eat
Yes.
because they eat mainstream. So the question, and this often happens when people are new in a relationship, hey, you want to go to the movies tonight? It's like, okay.
I'd rather not. I'd rather
yeah.
sit home and have
Yeah.
popcorn
Or
on the couch.
what movie were you?
Yeah.
If someone asks you, would you like to, if you would like to go to any movie on the planet with them, and the answer is just yes, it's easy. But I find if I want to know if somebody wants to do something, I say, I'd like to go to this specific restaurant or this movie tonight or tomorrow night. What would you like to do?
Mm-hmm.
Or would you like to do that? And then they can say,
they can respond.
No, I don't like that restaurant. I'm in the mood for this kind of food. How does that work with you? Or I don't want to see a chick flick, and I've heard that's a chick flick, but can we go to a different kind of movie? And to state what I want, and to state what my full intentions are, and to get our partners to do that. She's like, so Elaine, you want to go out to dinner? It's like, what specifically were you thinking? What are you in the mood for?
Right.
Narrow it down a little bit, and it's like, oh my God, that's so much work.
Well, but then when you live with somebody, you know their partner. When they say you want to go out for dinner, you already know what they want. And it's like, do I want to do what they want, or do I want to do what I want?
Yeah.
And so that's right. So it's a murky water. So it really what it amounts to is it's like we have to, whether we speak our truth outward or not, we at least have to be honest to ourselves. We have to acknowledge our personal truth. What is meaningful to me? There has to be some sort of truth is kind of like a nebulous thing. It's intangible. It's like what's true for her is not true for me. Or it could be. We could share the same truths. We could have different truths. So really what it amounts to is having the courage to acknowledge that, okay, she wants to, eat tofu, and I want to have, sweet potato, and, we'll just use that for example, and it's like, maybe she's set on her tofu, and I'm set on my sweet potatoes, so, it's like, how do you work that out, so, do you just keep your mouth shut, which I know a lot of people do, and you kind of grin and bear it, but the vibes you're giving off is like resentment. And anybody that has a lot of openness, especially open head, open solar plexus, they're going to be picking it up. So even though you haven't said anything, they know it anyway. Or do you say, well, I would like to go someplace that has sweet potatoes, and she says, I'd like to go someplace that has tofu. And there we are, then you go look in the book and say, well, how does that work?
Oh, it's the sweet potato and tofu restaurant.
Yeah,
Perfect.
there we go. That's just an example, but how that works. But it really gets down to, it takes courage. It takes awareness. You have to instead of going miles an hour through life, which our pace of life is so fast. You have to slow down and actually stop and, what do I feel? What am I feeling right now? And is this true for me? You can ask yourself, is this true for me? And that, like we've talked about, is a sliding scale, because as you grow and raise your awareness and learn new things about yourself and expand your awareness about the world and our interconnectedness, what was true for you, your personal truths, the big truths always stay there, but the personal truths start shifting, so that maybe, in other words, it may be, we go to a restaurant and maybe they don't have tofu and sweet potatoes, but they have nice salads.
Or you know what, too, even beyond that, as you're talking, I'm saying, okay, when this has happened with me, sometimes I just know that my spouse wants to go out to dinner.
And he really doesn't care where.
And I have to decide, do I want to do something that is pleasing for him?
Right.
And, okay, what are the positive things? Well, the positive things would be that we don't have all the distractions like we have around the house. We don't have the TV sitting in front of us as we eat. We don't have the cat begging for food or whatever. And so we could sit in a restaurant. I could drink iced tea, and we'd be sort of a captive audience with each other. And then we appear as a couple in a social setting, which is often reaffirming. So it's a lot more, there's that saying, I catch it. It's always about more than it's about.
Yes, it's always about what's the unseen.
Yeah. So yeah, it's some of it's about.
It's like we're like icebergs. This whole thing is like an iceberg. You see just a little tip, and there's a huge underneath the water.
And sometimes a lot of those underneaths, if we get deep enough, are connected.
Yeah.
And that's a greater truth.
Right.
So I think.
Well, like an iceberg, that might be a good analogy, because you see just the tip. but it's floating in the water, which the
Mhm.
water connects everything.
That's true, yeah. And so we can choose our truths, we choose them, and maybe the more people, because we are talking about people on earth,
Mm-hmm.
the more people who ascribe to a truth, especially
Right.
after being thoughtful, maybe the more true it is. But
Mhm.
ultimately, because God is greater than all of that, or the great connector, the great oneness includes all of that,
Mhm.
we can't really know the truth, because I think if, and again, this, people have different religious beliefs, but in terms of prophets or connection with God, if we are all of the Creator, there's a connection
Right.
of each of us. And so to allow someone else, a prophet, to say, no, this is the only thing God says, sounds more like a rationalization
That
than
sounds a
it
little
does
more
a
like,
truth.
like egos involved.
Yeah. So I hope I'm not offending anybody, but if I am, I love you anyway.
There we go.
And we're just trying to get to what makes us tick well together.
Right.
And and when we talk about truth, it's a sensitive subject.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't think that, by the way we've sort of analyzed and torn it together and torn it apart and put it back together.
But it's very personal. I mean,
It is,
it's like
yeah.
what, you could take and you could write down what is really important to you, what has meaning to you. And these become your truths, especially if you live them.
Mm-hmm.
And, and your list may be different than your partner's or your kids. But they're valid. It's still, whatever you've written down is your truth, is valid. So don't judge yourself for not having the right
popular truth,
right
yeah.
truth.
Right.
The goal though is to evolve your perception or the way you relate with truth, so that
So
you're
feel- yeah.
connecting with the truths that really support you in as a human, as a being, among our global community, as a cosmic being, basically, because we extend way beyond what we can see.
Yeah. And
Which
that's
is-
not just woo-woo either.
No, it's just
Quantum
scientists.
physics shows
Totally.
that. We're exchanging molecules. Look at
Yeah.
that. Or at least our shirts are. But
Yeah. No,
there's,
our oars are including. If you,
there's much more. There's so much more energy than there is mass.
yeah,
And so we are all connected. And to try to find a way to be present with that connectedness.
and to understand it and to allow it. Because the other
Yeah.
thing about truth is getting back to the Sagittarius and the bigger truth is allowing and not judging people that well, they drive that kind of a car because they think that's the best car, and I drive this kind of a car because I like this car. I mean,
Really?
it's like, okay, let them drive that car. For some reason it has meaning for them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, the car you drive has meaning for you, and to allow that, and to say it's okay. Say it's okay that I believe this, and it's okay that they believe that. And as long as nobody's getting hurt, that's probably the caveat.
That's often the caveat,
Is
yeah.
is it's not harming anyone or the environment or well.
Oh,
we
don't,
better
okay,
not go
maybe
there.
you can use that caveat. Because
but,
people will see threats in
Yeah.
other people's truths.
yeah,
They will really think. The early Christians, very early
Yeah.
Christians, were rabid believers that it was their mission on earth to change people to be Christians
Mhm.
or to kill them,
right,
because it was better to die than to live and not be a Christian.
right,
That's a very difficult truth for, I think, most any of us to accept.
right,
And yet we will assume that about other faiths.
right,
A lot of American Christians, or a number that I've heard of that have espoused it, believe that Muslims all believe
Right.
they must either convert or kill.
right, and that's not true.
That's not true. I mean,
There's a group, but
that's
that's
a very small group of people
Yeah.
who are rationalizing their own fears. That is their truth.
Yeah, because there's usually when somebody gets that rabid about a truth, there's usually an underlying fear that they're trying to protect. They're trying to protect something. Is a survival thing. I mean, we're down to some really basic, fears. It's like the whole Crusades thing. That was all political.
Mhm.
People were
Yeah.
maneuvering for position. I mean, it's like
Yeah. And a lot of the fears that we have today of others, of them, are made to fill in for our own shortcomings. Things that,
Right.
I personally, can say that I have shame for not being more active in the political process in America to keep it democratic. Not just voting, but doing other things. And so for that, if I was not acknowledging my role in that, I could blame any mess that exists on others, on
Right.
them.
Right. And that's
Hey.
the other part of it too, is every time we go judge somebody else for their truth, it's like we include everything, and we have all the energies in ourselves. All the truths. We're complete. We have everything. It's just we choose a certain framework, a certain pattern that's what makes us unique. We're a certain framework of energies, patterns of energies. But we have them all. And so, when we go judge somebody else for their beliefs, we're actually judging a part of ourselves, and
Is
we're
that-
denying a part of ourselves.
And it's that mirror.
Yeah.
When somebody really pushes your buttons with their truth or with the
Right.
way they express their truth, if you can at sometimes step back and say, not why are they bugging me so much, but
Right.
why am I being bugged so much?
Right.
What about me
Right.
makes me respond so strongly
Yeah.
to what they're saying? We can't always do that in the moment. It's really hard to do that in the moment because it does question us at our deepest core. And
Right.
it's difficult to walk around the world with an open core that's open to questioning all the time,
Right.
to an open soul and open spirit, because it hurts. We feel under attack.
Right.
But to at some time to say, wow, why did I get so triggered by that? Why does that person just really push my button, or why do I allow my buttons to get pushed by that person? What
Right.
about them? And often
It's something.
it's something
shadow.
reflected. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
I've never done, oh my God, I have. I've been that way, or
Right.
I've, even if, in any way.
Right.
And if that, so we don't always live our own truths.
No, we don't. It's like one of our truths that we don't live, that we really push away, is our shadow side.
Mm.
And I guess I could say that is one truth that we have, is we live in a dualistic world, and so we have two sides to us. And the one we try to show everyone is the high side, the high vibrational, the good side.
Or what we think is the good side,
Yeah,
what we
and
perceive as the
and
good
the
side.
other is the parts that like you
Mhm.
talked about, shame, the things that we've
Mhm.
done that make us feel guilty or unworthy or ashamed or
And I like that you said
No.
that make us feel that way, because sometimes that shadow side is really our better side.
Yeah.
But we've been keeping it pushed down because our perception of what's expected of us culturally
right,
or religiously or whatever is the opposite.
right,
And I think that's when we can get really ugly, is we're trying to
we're
we're trying to do something
manipulating.
that's
Yeah.
inauthentic to us.
Yeah, and so here's an example of where you can feel shame, which is actually it was actually expressing your powers. Like, here we go back to the restaurant again. Do you want to go to the restaurant? And if you say something and you feel guilty for saying, oh well, I really want to stay home and just eat what I have in the refrigerator tonight, and then you feel guilty about saying that. See that, then you shove that away. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm a bad person because I didn't do what he wanted, and so that's the shadow side that comes through. But really, you stood up and said what you had to say.
And behind all that is your truth that it's better to use food that you have than waste it.
Right.
And going out when you have perfectly good food here that needs to be used. I mean, there are a lot of things behind that that are valid.
Right.
But, going out to dinner, maybe, because that's a sensitive topic for both you and I,
Yeah.
because we know what's in food and we have chosen to eat certain ways and not to eat certain ways.
Yeah.
But I know, my husband, I know what I was going to say earlier. Exactly that. I have worked very hard to come up with my personal truths and my personal beliefs and my health habits and my political ideas. I have done a lot of deep questioning. and sharing and realizing that I'm not right about something and developing a new truth.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I will feel that my truth is more valid than his truth
Mm-hmm.
because he just sort of floated. And,
Mhm.
you know, his has served him from the beginning. He's never questioned it. That's not fair
Mm-hmm.
because, of course, he's suffered in life. He's gone through things that have challenged him, not the least of which is me.
That's our job.
But, you know, so again, here I am feeling justified in my truth because I've worked so hard at evolving it.
Yeah.
But still gives me no right to judge someone else who I don't think has worked as hard
Right.
at developing their truth.
Yeah.
That's just something that I have to get used to. And I think that's one of my biggest challenges is
Right.
not judging others who I think haven't worked as hard at personal growth and developing an authentic truth.
Well, and the other thing I found out with my partner is that, you know, because I have my opinions too, and you know,
she
and
does.
and you know, and they aren't always his. And I'll say something. I'm getting better. I start saying things, and you know, we'll have kind of a little. He doesn't say much. I do the talking.
He just has expressions.
Yes, he does the silent
Responses,
communication.
yeah.
But so so you know, after I'll get all huffety and puffety about something, and he'll maybe make a comment or two. He's a man of few words, and then I'll kind of be grumpy and it's like he just doesn't get it. He just doesn't understand me. No, and I'll go have to brood on it for a while, and then I'll start thinking about what he did say compared to what I said. And it's like, well, maybe there is some truth there in what he said. And maybe if I take some of what he said and apply it to what I wanted to do, maybe I can come up with a better solution. And so, you know, so that happens too. So here we go again. This is where truth is so malleable. It's adjustable, you know, and if you can allow yourself to not be set in stone, then you can take someone else's truth and apply bits and pieces that you can use and put it in yours and rearrange things and maybe come up with a better idea.
And that works when we share our real truth
Yeah.
with others. Sometimes at the moment it may just seem like it has been a total failure of communication.
Right.
Nothing's going to come of it. But I have noticed that if we can share our truth and then back off,
Step off and think about it.
they also will do that, even
Yeah.
if they're dead set. I've had this happen with people who I would not expect of this. You know, I've been thinking about what you said, or
Yeah,
all of a
that's
sudden
funny.
they're acting differently
Yeah,
because, you know, they've internalized, they've done some processing too. Go
Right.
figure. So we owe it to ourselves to process what people tell us
Right.
and not just hold the line against them.
You know, just toss it off like
Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
keep-
you know, earth types are really they're not too much about expressing their emotions, but what I've learned is they do when you say what you have to say and they feel the authenticity of it, then you know they take it to heart and they won't say anything, but they will, like you said,
Process.
they'll
Mhm.
process it and they'll kind of maybe modify their behaviors maybe or be a
Mhm.
little more considerate or
Mhm.
you know something. I mean,
Yeah.
you know.
Or simply remember what you said.
Yeah.
So when the time comes, they respond differently out of respect for you, which is
Yeah.
is huge. It
Yeah.
may seem like not a big thing at the time,
Right.
but it's
That's
huge.
yeah, it is huge, and that's all part of this. You know, trying to work things out, to be honest and authentic and truthful, and trying to because it's like we're all in this together, so we may as well figure out how to get along.
Is that the ultimate truth? We're all in this together?
Well, that could be one.
That could be one. Cool.
Yeah.
I like that one. That's boy,
Yeah.
we just stumbled on that, didn't we? But we are. We're all in this together. So
Yeah.
we are working on finding ways to be all in this together
Right.
in a nicer way, in a better
In
way.
a more harmonious way,
more harmonious way, yeah.
peaceful way, you know, where, I mean, I don't know, I think there are some people that, and I do know there are people who like to stir the pot just because it's fun to stir the pot.
They like to see
That
reactions.
stimulation, that adrenaline rush, you know.
Throw
but-
the rocks at the tiger in
yeah,
the cage.
just to see what happens. But, you know, I think for most of us, we kind of, especially the water earth types, you know, even the air types, fire. Well,
All
fire-
of us.
yeah, we all, we kind of, we do need our downtime. We do want our peaceful time, but I know the earth and water types really do like peace and harmony.
Mhm.
They want just everything nice and calm and quiet and no rock the boats. Maybe not. And maybe a little bit. You got to have a little
Well,
stimulation.
I
but
think sometimes you realize too,
you know.
you have to sometimes shake it up to let it settle.
right,
Because even with water, things can get
right. They get stagnant.
stagnant. And sometimes you have to bring stuff in, oxygen in, or you have to bring
Right.
something in, or movement in. And
So it's a cycle. You
Yeah,
can't. It's just not a
yeah.
flat.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, we're going to be peaceful. It's going to stay like this forever. It's
it takes
cycles.
work. It takes
It's
work to be
cycles.
peaceful. It takes work
Yeah.
to have harmony.
And you have to have your little tempest and your
Mhm.
little storm, and then you
Yeah.
go back and you
Well,
sort
look
it
at-
out.
Look at music. Now, I don't know a lot of music, but I know that harmony in music
Yeah.
takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
There are some people who are just good at it,
Oh, you mean like singing?
like singing, yeah,
Mhm.
or directing an orchestra. I mean,
Yeah.
all these different things, but they can make beautiful music together. It takes work.
when
It
they're all
doesn't
in the
just
same time and when they're all on the same note and
And
they're
it-
all tuned right.
and it doesn't just happen.
Yeah.
So when we expect the truth just to be the truth and just to
Yeah.
happen,
So I
it's
guess
not
the
been
bottom
easy.
line is a work in progress.
Work in progress. We're all in this together. We're all progressively working, hopefully working,
Yeah.
to make progress.
So if any of you watching this would like to engage with us further, just go ahead. Feel free to contact us.
Yeah.
We
Contact
love,
us.
We
yeah.
love the talk.
Contact us, make comments, start,
Yeah.
continue the conversation. If we
Yeah.
offended you, let us know. And,
And we'll allow you to offend us.
yeah, because it's part of the process.
Yeah.
And we strong.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
thank you. I think that's it.
Yeah.
It's a good way to stop.
Yeah.
Until next time,
Yeah. I'm Elaine.
I'm Jackie.
There we go. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.